It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't a breakthrough. It was just stillness. He sat at a traffic light, hands on the wheel, watching the glow shift from red to green, and in that moment, ordinary, unnoticed by the world, something cracked. Not loudly, not violently, but with the quiet certainty of truth. He saw it. The lie he'd been living. Not a lie told to him, but one he'd slowly built around himself, layer by layer, through years of pretending. Smiling when he didn't mean it, chasing what he didn't value, performing a version of life that wasn't his, and just like that, the world felt hollow. The office promotions, the vacation selfies, the carefully curated laughter at dinner tables, it all seemed like shadows on a wall. Beautiful, but empty. He hadn't suffered a tragedy. He wasn't searching for meaning. He had simply awakened, and that's when it all changed. Because once you see the truth, raw, unfiltered, terrifyingly real, there's no going back. He couldn't fake small talk anymore. He couldn't follow the rules without questioning who wrote them. The things that once made him proud, now made him ache. They say awakening brings peace. They forget to mention the loneliness. Because when you finally see the truth, you also see how many people are still asleep. But he couldn't unsee it, and the life he had carefully built began to fall apart. It didn't explode. It dissolved. His life didn't end in a blaze. It faded. Piece by piece. Quietly. Invisibly. The first thing to go was conversation. He'd sit across from old friends, hearing them talk about their goals, their plans, their next escape. But the words floated around him like smoke, present, but impossible to hold. He wasn't better than them, just elsewhere. He'd nod, smile, pretend. But inside, he felt it. A widening distance, not because he didn't care, but because they were speaking a language he no longer understood. The second thing to go was ambition. The ladder he'd been climbing now looked like scaffolding around a house no one lived in. Titles, upgrades, recognition, things that once lit him up, now felt like distractions from something much deeper and much more painful. He had outgrown the life he had spent years building. And that is a grief no one warns you about. They tell you how hard it is to fail. They never tell you how much it hurts to succeed at something you no longer believe in. He started walking more, talking less, listening to things no one else could hear, like the sound of his own soul, gasping for air after years beneath the surface. And here's the cruelest part. He couldn't explain it. Not to his parents, not to his partner, not even to himself, all he knew was this. He had stepped outside the story everyone else was still living in, and now he was alone. He thought clarity would feel like light. Instead, it felt like drifting. This was the part no one talks about, the in-between, not the life he left, not the life ahead, just silence. He wandered through days without shape, woke up with no script to follow. Some mornings he missed the old structure, the calendar, the meetings, the momentum of being needed. But deeper than that, he knew returning wasn't an option. He had tasted truth. And now, nothing artificial could fill him. He tried meditating, journaling, hiking through the woods. He read Rumi, Jung, Gibran. The words stirred something, but didn't complete it. What he was looking for wasn't written anywhere. It had to be lived. But this kind of life doesn't come quickly. It asks for everything, because before you can become who you truly are, you must face the death of who you thought you were. He felt grief for the mask he had worn. Not because it was fake, but because it had once protected him. It got him through school, work, parties, expectations. But now, that mask had become a cage, and outside that cage was a terrifying freedom. No path, No guarantees, no applause, just a quiet pull in the chest that whispered, "This way," even if no one follows. At night, he'd lie awake, not from anxiety, but from a strange, growing calm. The calm that comes not from knowing where you're going, but from finally being willing to go. He didn't talk much about what happened. Not because it wasn't important, but because it was sacred. Some things aren't meant to be explained, only lived. He still walked the same streets, passed the same buildings, nodded at the same faces. But he was no longer inside the same story. Where once he rushed, he now paused. Where once he needed approval, he now needed truth. And where once he feared silence, he now listened to it, like an old friend. His outer world hadn't changed, but inside everything had shifted. He didn't feel above anything, just beneath it all, finally rooted, like a tree that had stopped growing toward the expectations of others and started growing downward into the rich soil of what was real. He no longer asked, "What should I do with my life?" He asked, "What's worth being alive for?" He no longer chased moments that impressed others. He created moments that mattered to him. Reading in the morning light, calling someone just to say, "I hear you," sitting by a window with nothing to prove and everything to feel. This was not the life he was promised. It was the life he earned by letting go. And in the quiet of his own soul, he knew he would never trade the cost of this clarity for the comfort of confusion again. Because once you awaken, even if no one else understands, you know one thing with absolute certainty. You're finally living a life you don't have to escape from. Final CTA, one line. Clarity changes everything, because once you see the truth, pretending becomes impossible.